You're listening to Her Space, an Architect My Business mini show highlighting women architects, designers, and allies who have paved the way for women to lead and own their space in architecture, engineering, and construction. Formerly known as the Architect My Life podcast, this show will continue to feature inspiring conversations, stories, and experiences of women in the built environment, empowering you to realize your full potential. Join me as I chat with remarkable women in the field and prove that in the world of architecture and design, every place has a space for her. Let's get started. I'm so excited to have her in the show today. Welcome to the show, Katerina.
Thank you so much for having me, Aya.
It's such a pleasure to have, a fellow podcaster on my show. I just wanted to mention that I heard about your podcast from a podcast list of the 100 top AEC podcasts in the US, and
Yes.
You topped it, right?
Thank you. I did. Last year was a very successful year for my podcast, From the Honeycomb. So yes, I have seen it's amazing growth and so many listeners I've connected with sharing architecture, design, and Vastu Shastra.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really commend about, being an entrepreneur and a podcaster, it takes a lot of commitment. And you are very consistent in podcasting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell about your cadence?
Well, I'd say I love podcasting and just connecting with other women, like-minded women. I do have a lot of women architects on, but also in the engineering world. And then I also like to sprinkle in, other female entrepreneurs, or I've had an astrologer on, or I've had someone talk about living life deliberately. So it's kind of an array of anything I'm interested in. I connect with the women and have them come on my podcast. I'm very selective. There's been a few male guests as well, but it's just overall, I'm a very curious person. And so when I reach out to people, I want to hear their story. I want to learn about whatever they are sharing or whatever their profession is. And the key to staying consistent is I'm just a very organized person. And so I've established a system where I batch recordings. So right now it's like every 2 months, I'll have a few days where I just do multiple recordings with guests. And then that gives me enough content for the next following 2 months. And then I also have an incredible podcast editor who does all of my editing.
That's great. I mean, it's really not easy to run a business, talk to clients, manage your podcast. But yeah, congratulations on your podcast, Katerina.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm really excited. We have a lot to cover. So let's start with your ARE journey, architecture registration exams journey. And it's quite intense. Like you have to take so many classes and exams. So talk about what was your prep like?
Absolutely. So my ARE journey was a roller coaster of emotions, of failures and passing. It was definitely one of the hardest things I'd ever done in life. And I started back in 2017 so I had graduated from university at Illinois Tech in Chicago in 2015, gave myself a little break, and then 2017 decided to, jump on the exams. And it was when the transition from ARE 4.0 to 5.0 was occurring. And so I was actually one of the first few people to take programming and analysis in the 5.0 series. They were giving out a free retake and $100 gift card. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose. So I ended up taking that exam, failing it miserably. I mean, I did not study at all there, but there also wasn't enough material out there. Like now, ARE candidates have a wealth of knowledge that they can look towards. There's so many programs you can do. But back when it was going from the 4.0 to 5.0, the passing rates were just much lower than they are now. And so I ended up failing that exam, and it actually took a few weeks to get those results. Now you get it within 24 hours. So I ended up taking a break, actually moving from Chicago back to California, which is where I've grown up. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, but I spent most of my life growing up in California. So I moved back to sunny California weather, and I had a few things happening personally that kind of shifted. I got a new job, and I started tackling my exams again back in 2019. Once I felt like I've kind of had that time and space and support, especially the biggest support you can have is your family and friends around you. And that was when I started dating my now husband, and he was a huge support for me during the exams. And so as of 2019, I started taking the exams, passing, failing, and officially getting my license in 2022. getting my California
Congratulations.
exam done. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So, can you share any memorable experiences or a single lesson that you learned from the ARE journey that has
Mhm.
shaped your work today?
I would say the amount of like I am not afraid of failure anymore because I failed so many times on those exams. I think I don't know. I know I took at least all of the combined, all of the exams passed and failed over 20 times. Like when
So
you
there
put
are
them all
five
together.
exams in ARE 5 or 6, I forget.
There are 6 and there's a
Okay.
7th California exam. So
Oh
even
my
if
God.
so there's a lot. And I took the PDD. It took me on my 5th try to pass. So, like when I say it was a hard
You
journey
are
for me, it was.
amazing.
Thank you.
It's easy to get
Thank you.
discouraged. It is easy to get discouraged.
Absolutely. It's the perseverance. Like once I've done able to conquer the AREs, now that I've started my own company and I'm an entrepreneur, like failure isn't even, I'm not worried about failing because I know that the lessons I've learned from ARE, I've been able to apply it even to other parts of my life and especially to running a business. Like if something doesn't work out, oh well, grieve it, have the moment, and then move on and just learn and grow from that experience.
I love that. A lot of architects or creatives are perfectionists. We want to do everything
Mhm.
right the first time.
Yeah.
But failing 5 times is really difficult, and you just kept on going. And congratulations. Now, look at you. You have your own company called Katerina Burianova Inc. Can you tell us about your firm and how you got started?
Absolutely. So after October 2022, I got my California license. And then February of 2023, so about exactly a year ago, this last week, I incorporated and started my own company. And I was still working at my previous employer at the time, but the conversation with my boss was, I'd like to go off on my own. When that transition is going to happen, let's see. And I was very open and transparent with him, and unfortunately the transition happened a little sooner than I thought. I was hoping to transition from full-time to part-time to then working for fully for myself at the end of 2023, but I ended up getting let go of May of 2023 and being fully on my own. So it was a kind of just thrown into the waters and hope you make it. And but ever since then, so I got let go in May last year, and then as of June, I've just been so happy having my own company. I I love being the boss, and the opportunities, the people I have met, the networking, the confidence I have now. Like this I've made it to the destination. Like every failure, every practice test, every, job I ever had, even working at a hot dog restaurant, like has brought me to this time in my life where I have my own company and it feels incredible.
And as a woman in architecture, that's
Yes.
freaking amazing. Congratulations. So, how did you
Thank
get your
you.
first client? Was that like so exciting? And when you got your
It
first
was.
paycheck,
It
can you
was.
talk
It
about that?
was. Absolutely. So my first client that I ended up signing it was just for a very small project. It was a deck repair, which is actually under construction right now. So I ended up signing that project my first week of fully being on myself by myself. How I got that project was actually, so my husband is a general contractor and his dad is a general contractor. And so I had kind of already started putting feelers out just to, get some small projects. Maybe my goal was to probably moonlight, do that part-time work, make that transition into working for myself. But so I kind of started getting some feelers out, and so my father-in-law knew another contractor who does smaller projects in the area, and he ended up reaching out to me, and that's how I got my first project. But it was definitely nerve-wracking because I'm putting together like an estimate of what I think my hours are going to be, how long am I going to take on this project, and the client also, so I use the AIA contracts for my contracts, but I've modified the like custom residential contract to like fit more of my projects and my kind of how I work. But her sister's a lawyer, and her sister went through my contract with a fine tooth comb, and we were
Oops.
actually yeah, it was, but I was
Oops.
very proud of myself. I Because I had studied the AIA contracts during the ARE exams, I knew the language, I knew how to explain certain things, I knew the wordage, and because I was so familiar with it, when the client called me and she's like, hey, my sister looked through it. She had a few questions. I was able to stand by my contract, explain everything. It ended up being a 2-hour phone call. And the funny thing is, we were actually camping that weekend with my husband.
My God.
So yeah. I'm at this campsite walking around explaining my AIA contract. And I'm like, but there was just something about it where I'm like, this is the life of an entrepreneur. Like, I can go camping but I'll be working on my company. And like, sometimes like, this is my new life. Like it was a surreal moment. And then when the contract got signed, of course, like it was like, okay, now here we go. And I was setting up the standards. And I mean, the client, she has been absolutely incredible. She's been a reference for projects that I've taken on now, bigger projects. And she has just been someone that, believed in me. And, I know it was only a deck repair, but I'm also doing more work for her now. And so that's one of the biggest lessons is, sure, I was working in custom residential, high-end, beautiful homes at my previous job. And, my first project on my own wasn't the same, multi-million-dollar home. It was just a small deck repair. But, so I was humbled, but that work has now grown into more work. And I'm able to use that person as a reference to get work that's becoming, the same scale of what I used to do.
See, I love this. Adam Grant, he's an organizational psychologist. He said, you plant the seeds of greatness in your daily grind. So, it's a deck. The deck will turn into a kitchen, a garage reno, a basement, and then a full house. And then sooner or later, you'll be doing multifamily or hotels, whatever. You need to start somewhere. And it's very humbling, right? From working on like a rail building to a deck.
Yes.
So what are the projects you're working on nowadays?
So other projects I have, so there was actually 2 deck repairs that I ended up signing the first 2 months. And another project that I ended up signing is actually a full-blown 2-story house design of a house in Canada. And so I'm not licensed in Canada, but I can do the design work. And that project actually incorporates Vastu Shastra, which is something I know we were going to talk about. I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up, but
you should talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Awesome. So Vastu Shastra is an ancient Vedic science. So if you're familiar with feng shui, feng shui is from China. Vastu Shastra is from India. And so what it is, it's, laying out certain spaces in your home to help with the flow of energy, to bring in prosperity, abundance, and, bring in all of, the good, positive energy. And so I started studying Vastu Shastra actually when I was studying for my ARE exams. I ended up learning about it through a seminar, and, I was kind of wondering like, what should I do? Like, I love architecture, I love yoga. And that's how I kind of found Vastu Shastra. It's like a combination of both. There's like, it has to do with the energy, the balance of the home. And so I started to research it more and more. And most recently I've taken, courses. I've gotten, I'm certified as a consultant. And I was on another podcast talking about Vastu Shastra, and a listener had listened in, and she's someone who resonated with it, with, designing her home per Vastu principles. So she reached out to me and she asked if I could design their forever home in Canada. So that's been a really fun project, which has been amazing.
Congratulations. That's a big leap from a deck to another country.
It definitely is. I mean, it's only the schematic design, because I told them, I said, I can't do your construction documents. You'll have to get someone local. But I said, absolutely, like I can help design it. So I have floor plans, elevations, renderings. And the great thing about that project is I've been able to use a lot of those renderings for my portfolio. Because, when you're first starting out, like, yes, I could show the deck off, but I also don't want to pigeonhole myself and only do decks. Here, having this project that's a house, I'm able to put that on my portfolio, say this is, a schematic design concept, but I have, a house that I can show that shows my style, shows my, detailing, things like that. So that was a huge project to get. And then I'm also doing an interior remodel in the LA area. And I'm also doing an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. They're very popular in California right now because of the housing shortage. There are laws put into place that allow you to build like a mother-in-law suite, like a secondary unit on your property, and kind of go over like the setback requirements are less and the city requirements are less submittals. So it's something that a lot of Californians right now are doing, and especially in Laguna Beach, the town I work in mostly. So I've got an ADU there, so I'm working on that as well. So those are kind of my big projects right now. And then I'm doing some consultation projects on the side. I also do drafting work for a woman in Florida. So there's a lot.
Congratulations. It's really good.
Thank you.
And you're only a year in,
Yes.
right? That's
Yes.
great. So
Thank you.
so when you the ADU, are they separate detached units? Like,
So they can be attached, detached, or converted. So you can take a garage and convert it into an ADU. And there's certain
oh, okay.
requirements, like it has to have a kitchen, separate entrance. Essentially, you can also rent it out for like Airbnb. That's what a lot of people do. But really, it's supposed to help with just getting more housing, because California just has the housing shortage.
So I'm really curious about the Vastu exactly. Like,
Yes.
can you give us certain examples of like what you do for a living room, or it's kind of like the Indian version of Feng Shui. Is that correct? Like,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So can you give us some, tips on that? Like when a client comes to you, is it the whole flow can they just do a kitchen? Does it have to be a home? Do you go to
Mm-hmm.
homes and rearrange? Because Feng Shui people, they go and then they move stuff around. So can you
Mm-hmm.
talk about that a little more in detail?
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So actually one of the things I offer is Vastu consultations, and I'll take a floor plan and I'll look at, what I do is you place a Vastu chakra, which is like it's a circle, and it's got 16 directions. So you have north, south, east, west, but then you'll also have northeast, southeast, southwest, north, northwest, north. So there's 16 directions in total. And so you lay that onto the floor plan of a house. And there's certain spaces that can be in certain zones. So for example, a kitchen is really good to have in the southeast area of the home, because that has to do with the fire element. There's also around the chakra, there's the different elements and the element theory that comes into play. And each of these areas also have to do with something. So for example, the north area of the home has to do with money and opportunity. So having something like, so let's say you did have a kitchen in this area of the house, which it's not recommended because it's a fire element, and the north area of the home is a water element. So if you were to have, your stove there, that could create an imbalance in the energy in that space, and it could mean that you're not going to get that money and opportunity that's not going to come to you. So there's certain remedies you can do to fix it. Now, in a situation like that, I would recommend you move the stove to a different location, but let's say you can't. So then there's bringing options of color. So the north area of the home is like, blues and greens, because you're in that water element. So there's ways that you can balance the home and bring in that energy that you want. And so, for example, that project I talked about in Canada where I have a clean slate, I mean, that's an amazing project, right? Because I can design however I need to lay out, where the laundry room's going to go, because there's certain things in Vastu that create like a negative effect. So the laundry, the washer, because it creates a spinning motion, there's certain areas of the home that they're recommended to be put in, as well as toilets, because toilets are seen as negative, right? They flush away the energy. So where you locate your toilet is also very specific. But some overall generic, kind of Vastu tips that listeners can take away from, without having, the Vastu chakra put on your floor plan, is keeping your spaces decluttered. So that's a big thing is, you want the energy to move through the space, and having the energy be stagnant. It's, when you work, you come up to your desk and it's messy and you can't like find anything and you can't work or be productive. It's the same kind of principle. You want to be able to have your space be clean. So if there's an area of the home that is kind of like your junk drawer, your closet space that has a lot of stuff, whatever area of that home is represented in that like section of the home, that's part of your life that can be affected. So those are some of the kind of things about Vastu. So there's definitely changes you can do. You don't have to, remodel the entire house. There's certain remedies just by adding colors or spending time somewhere else, or depending on how your bed is laid out. Like you should sleep with your head to the south, feet to the north, for example. So just because that works with the electromagnetic waves of the polars of the earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm already overwhelmed, but it's good. So do people come and say, I have relationship problems. Is there a way I can fix my house to attract, my a future husband, or I mean, is that a thing? Like people ask?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, can you?
So there's definitely something that yes. So it all depends on your floor plan, on your layout as well. And like looking at that, that's how you can figure out remedies. But that is absolutely something that I can do. And I'm actually helping a friend right now. She's remodeling her home. And I had previously looked at her home, and there were areas, I was looking at it and I said, a lot of like where your entrances into the home, the main entrance, not entrances into different rooms specifically, but into the home, they have a different effect. And a lot of things that she had with her layout, as well as one of her main entrances, had to do with like depression and anxiety. And I said, hey, since you moved into this house, have you felt really depressed? Like where you're sleeping is not a good zone. And she goes, and so all of a sudden she unfolded all of this information to me, and she's like, you know what, since we've moved here, we've had these financial issues, and this has been a lot going on. And so I've kind of helped her now that they're remodeling. She just sent me her floor plans that they're remodeling. And she said, can you take a look at this? Where should we, put the laundry? What do you think about this? Where should the couch be? So there's certain things I can do. And I asked her, I said, there's a list of things, do you want more opportunities or increase your finances or find love? So I'll ask a person, what is it that you're specifically looking for? Because I can help you figure that out. Like we can't, also, when you think about it, when you approach everything and start changing a bunch of things, you don't know what works and what doesn't, right? So it's making small changes to the space, feeling their effects, because it can also do with the astrology of the person living in the home, which I'm not a consultant in. I'm more of the architectural Vastu consultant. I look at the spaces and the layout, but there's also the astrological aspect of a person that will also affect the energy of the home.
That's so fascinating. Is there something in your website that people can choose? Like, if people have no idea what Vastu is, and different kind of consulting tiers, like analysis, and so what
Absolutely.
are that? What is that kind of what service tiers do you offer? I'm curious because you never know. One person might be going through stuff and can't figure it out. Maybe
Absolutely.
they can work with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what is yeah?
So yes, I offer different options. Obviously, I do the consultation for an existing home. So I'll take a look at your floor plan and figure out, what it is that you're looking for, or if you're feeling like, based on since you moved into this home, how can you improve the space? I can also do like the project I mentioned, the Canada project, where from the ground up. Or if you're thinking about remodeling your home, I can also, talk to you about ways that you can remodel if that's something that's also within your budget, where you can, expand, or you want to change out the layout. And so I do offer a 15-minute free consultation, which I can provide you a link with so the listeners can listen to that, find that, because it's overwhelming, right? You're thinking, do I need to remodel, or can I just move some furniture around, add some curtain colors, change that out? Will that make a difference? So there's little things that you can do. Like actually, for example, in our shower at home, I had a lot of green and blue tones, and our shower is in like the southwest area of the home, and that is supposed to be like earth and fire. And so not really blue colors, right? You're thinking browns, yellows, golds. And so I actually just changed out the shower curtain and changed out the curtain rods to be these little gold, like brass hangers. And that was to help improve like the positive flow of energy and cash and like finances. And since I have made that change, I've had 2 very big clients approach me. So I've definitely have felt that energy. Of course, my husband supports it in some ways, and he is a little skeptical. Like he's like, I don't know about this, but he's really supportive and sweet. And he's bought me a few things that have helped around the house as well. Because I'll be like, oh my gosh, we have to move this, and of course, like when the abundance starts coming in, there's that I told you so.
So when you get new clients, is that something like, what if they don't know about Vastu? Do you say, can we integrate? Do you introduce that to the potential new client, or do they? Yeah, how does that work?
So not for like the projects I do locally. Most of that I definitely keep it separate. I kind of see what the client would think. I'm thinking about Vastu as I'm laying out the space, but I don't incorporate Vastu into every project. So because you hire me, I'm not doing Vastu planning. So like for the ADU, I did not do a Vastu analysis of the project. So that's separate. I don't incorporate it into every project. perfect, but it's definitely something, as I'm laying out the space, it's something I do consider, but I kind of gauge on what the client, if they'll react to that, because I do know it can be seen as a little woo-woo as well. Yeah.
I know what you mean. It's like, you're right. It could be seen as woo, like, what's that? The energy.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in all that, by the way.
Right.
Like, I just decluttered and like I can breathe now. I have the energy flow.
Good. Yeah.
No, that's so fascinating. I'm like, it's great that you're integrating all this in your business, because every little thing counts, right? From wellness to
Yes.
Vastu to having an open mindset, from not being afraid to fail, just trying different things. We only live once, might as well, right? Just experiment and be open. So
Exactly.
in your career, right, as a woman, what were the challenges you've encountered in, like, running your business as a woman, in particular in architecture, and how did you overcome those challenges?
As a woman so far, having my own company, I haven't seen any challenges. I haven't experienced any challenges. I mean, there's been some one-off comments, for sure, because I love pink. It's my favorite color. So my business cards are pink. My headset is pink. My invoices are pink. Like, everything is pink. And so, of course, like, I've given a card to someone and they've smirked and been like, oh, it's a pink business card. And I'm like, okay, well, move on. So there's nothing, like, I would say that I've felt any challenges as a woman yet. I mean, there's been moments where, because I like in my previous jobs, that I felt the difference of being a woman. Especially, there was one place I worked at where briefly there was another employee, and he was older than me. He was almost licensed, and I was just fresh out of college. But I worked at the company longer than he did. And so when he came on one of my projects, and I was giving him directions, and he did not like getting directions from a younger woman, with less experience. And so, he ended up being let go. And I'm very confident in who I am, and I have to thank my parents, for teaching me that. And I just there's a lot that I just kind of shrug off. And so, even that's kind of the mindset I have with going into my company. And, if ever there is a situation, of course you'll get, I've worked with contractors who will refuse to pick up my call, right? Like, they just, because I'm organized. I've called them out on their mistakes in front of clients. Like, I'm also very honest and transparent. And I know I won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it's reminding myself to not take it personally. And so if there ever is someone who has an issue with me, or just doesn't think, I'm professional or whatever, that's something they're working through, and I can't take it personally.
Yeah, that's a great mindset, because you look young and you're a woman and like you're smart, and some people like, oh, why should I take advice from that girl? Like, she's like young, right?
Yeah.
Because but that's good. Never, don't take things personally. I like that mentality. You don't have the victim mentality. Like, you're just like, whatever. I know I'm right. I do the right thing. If you make a mistake, you own it. But if not, move on, right?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you're extremely organized. Do you have any tools you can recommend to, what tools do you use in running your firm?
I use a notebook that I write my notes in.
Yeah.
So, super tech and savvy. I have a notebook where I have all my to-do lists. But for me, I am someone who is, as many architects, where I'm very visual. And so, color coding for me, I use Google Keep. That's how I color code. I have color coded folders. And I also, like I mentioned earlier with podcasting, I like to batch work. And so, for example, now in my day, because the big transition when you go from working for an employer to working for yourself, the biggest hurdle for me at first was the schedule. I'm like, well, I don't have to clock in anywhere. I could work at, whenever I want. Like, I could work on a Sunday, I could work on a Friday afternoon, I could work on a Monday morning, like, whatever schedule. So creating a schedule for myself, and then that's where the batching comes in. So I know I am the most productive in the morning. So I do all of my hard tasks, anything that requires the most brain power during that time. And then after lunch, which is like the time where I'm not very productive, That's when I'll do client meetings or podcast episodes, or I'll be productive, but I know that the most energy I've spent is in the mornings. And so that's where my most productivity is. So that's where I'm going to get the most work done. So I do it based off of the morning and the afternoon and where my energy levels are.
That's great. I do that too. I do most of my brain work in the morning, and then afternoon are meetings and podcasting.
Nice.
So talking about podcasting, you've built a really good personal brand, and like your From the Honeycomb podcast. How has the podcast helped your business?
Well, so my podcast, I do want to share something for, so if someone's listening and is trying out podcasting or isn't feeling like they have the confidence to, put themselves out there, the first 5 months of my podcast, I had maybe like 10 downloads an episode because I was so nervous about putting myself out there and like getting feedback. Like I didn't market it anywhere. I only told family and friends. And I just, I was so embarrassed. Like I didn't know how to approach people to have them on as guests. Like there's so many incredible podcasters out there now who just reach out and, they're like 3 episodes in and they're like, yeah, I want to have you on the podcast. Like I admire everybody who has that kind of confidence. I was definitely someone who was like, I don't know if anybody will want to listen to this. And so I did get that confidence with the podcast. And now that podcast has given me a tool. It's really a tool for me to connect and network with people. And with that, I've been able to get jobs like the Canada Project. I was on another podcast. We ended up doing a podcast switch. So those 2 guests came on my podcast. I came on their podcast. So it's also allowed me to reach a larger audience as well. And then another way I've actually gotten work from the podcast is the woman that I do the drafting work for in Florida. I ended up having Ben Norkin on. He's from Hyperfine. So Hyperfine is ARE like study tools that you can use. And I used all of his ARE study tools and I took his Revit course and I had, he was just like, it was amazing. His work was like, to me, like, oh my gosh, so exciting. Like he seemed like a ARE celebrity to me and just someone very not like, someone I couldn't reach out to, but I was just like, I would sometimes ask him questions. And then it was like the biggest moment for me, like last year where his team reached out to me and was like, hey, we'd like to have him on the podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm so honored. So he came on the podcast. We ended up having a great conversation. He talked about entrepreneurship. And the week his podcast was airing is essentially, or right before his podcast episode aired, I had been let go. And so I ended up reaching out to him and I said, hey, I needed like a photo to promote the episode. And I said, hey, by the way, guess what? I got let go. So your episode has actually been really helpful for me to re-listen to as I navigate transitioning into working for myself fully. And he said, well, let me know if you need help with anything. And he said, if you need help work right now, I know someone who's looking for a CAD drafter. I know she's in Florida, but let me connect you guys and you can at least get some sort of income coming through. And so her work helped me stay afloat the first 3 months of working because, even though I did have that deck repair project, those plans, there wasn't that much to do. It's such a small project. So even working for her on the side helped keep my company afloat. And I wouldn't have met her had he had not come on my podcast and had he not heard of my podcast.
See, I love those stories. I just came from a podcast conference and a lot of people, like me, I'm a podcaster and people ask, how many subscribers do you have? How many downloads? I'm like, it's not really about that. It's about the connections. Yeah. Right? Like some of my guests have become clients when they find out that I do drafting. I have a drafting company. They become clients. So it's not really about the downloads, but it's just the people who I can serve, share, and then maybe convert in the future. So I really like that, podcasting is not about, getting sponsorships and getting 1.5 million downloads. No, it's about, really reaching out your message to the right people when they need it. Like you and that ARE celebrity, right? So, exactly. So what is from the Honeycomb mean, and what is the podcast? What is the idea behind the podcast?
Absolutely. So the From the Honeycomb podcast came from this idea where back in 2020 when COVID happened and I couldn't study for the AREs because testing centers were closed, I told my husband, I need something to do. Let's do something creative together. Let's do a blog. And I had been studying Vastu Shastra, and I said, I need something to help me if I study study Vastu Shastra and we talk about architecture, because he's a general contractor. And I said, between all of that, if we can make a blog about it, then that'll be like super fun, something for us to work on together. And we called it so we both were like, okay, what should like the title be? So we both took a creative day to just like draw something. And we both came back with honeycomb shaped ideas. Like, we love the geometry. We also love that we're both like busy bees. We love working and we love going out into the world, like learning something. Because every time we come home, at the end of the day, we like to share and like talk about our day. And, since we both work in the industry, we can really like resonate with what the other person, went through that day. And so we're always learning and we're both really curious. So we came up with this idea for this blog, but the blog just didn't end up going anywhere. And I realized, I was like, podcasting is a thing now. Like, it'd be fun to have like a podcast. And I also love to talk. So why not? Let's just do a podcast. And so that's where the transition from blog to podcast happened. And I thought, I really like the honeycomb idea. And so what about From the Honeycomb, where it's a place you can come and learn, and there's going to be a various, kinds of topics. And like bees, like we're all going to go out into the world, and then you're going to come back to the honeycomb and you're going to learn about something and like be curious, like, because I'm very curious to learn about it. And, the honeycomb shape geometrically is really interesting as well. So that brings in like the design and architecture aspect of it as well. And that's how kind of From the Honeycomb started. And the podcast has evolved. I've talked about, Vastu Shastra on it, but I've also had, female guests on talking about, like I mentioned, like I've had an astrologer, I've had a sex coach on, I've had like, it's just anything I'm interested in and I'm curious about learning. Those are the people I invite. And then of course I like to do like words of the year. So there's things that I've started to build and create this community. And I love what you said about, the podcasting. It's not about the numbers, because that's like one of the questions I really don't like is like, how many subscribers do you have? And like, how many downloads? Okay. But it's quality over quantity. Like, I could have 1 million followers and only 10 people who actually really care about my stuff. Or I could have 500 followers and 500 people who are interested in, my content. And so it's all about the quality and creating this community. And it's just been incredible. Like the woman I have connected with it's just been so inspiring. And the people I've met, it's really the podcast has given me like that platform to also reach such an audience and connect with people that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to connect with. And especially because of COVID. And, I feel like I now have like a community of friends all over the world that I didn't have before the podcast.
Did you ever have a celebrity moment when people say, hey, I know you? Like,
Not yet.
not yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Can I take a photo with you? I know you.
Yeah. Not yet. I would love that though. Hopefully one day.
Yeah. So what's next, Katerina?
Well, what's next is I'm going to keep growing my company, of course, and getting more projects and just loving life being a boss. But I'm also, because it's been now a full year since I started my company, I have wanted to give back because so many people helped me. I like to say, like, it takes a village to start a company. And there are so many people who helped me, from people I met on social media to family and friends. But there are so many people I asked questions about, and people who were there to answer questions that, Google couldn't. And I want to give back to people who also want to start their own company. And so I am writing a book about how to start your own architecture firm, and it'll be an ebook. It's a workbook format. So it'll take you through the whole process from having that initial conversation with your spouse, your partner, your family, to opening up a bank account. How do you set up a corporation? How, do you start your website, branding, kind of taking you through that whole journey, because it's overwhelming starting your own company and there is so much information out there. So I want to bring it all into one kind of, resource that people can look through. But I also want to bring in, gratitude. So there's a gratitude list, and throughout, once it gets overwhelming, I want you to check in with positivity. And then there's going to be a guided meditation by me that you can listen to kind of help center you. I also have a guide of, what crystals to bring with you, like there's a specific crystal I bring with me to client meetings. And so I'll be sharing that as well. And then there's stories from, when I was starting the company, like things that I have learned. And so I want to help others have their own company, because I've been getting a lot of questions, especially on social media and through the podcast, and that kind of inspired me to create something that people can come to. And because I think if you want to have your own company, do it.
I love it. So the ebook is going to be released
March 27th.
March 27th. What is the title? Do you have the title yet?
Okay, I don't have that title yet. There's a few ideas for what it's going to be, but I will provide you with the links. And but I'm excited to be launching it.
So what else? Is there anything else? Where can people find you? Your socials? Yeah,
absolutely. So you can find me on @From the Honeycomb podcast on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. And that's really where I'm most active. And you can listen to From the Honeycomb podcast on all major streaming platforms.
And website, your company website?
Yes, it's kbarchitectinc.com/Vastu if you want to look at the Vastu consultations and book a free 15-minute consultation with me.
Thank you so much, Katerina. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's been a pleasure.
Same. Thank you, Aya.
Thanks for listening to Her Space. If you want more, head over to architectmybusiness.com for more episodes, show notes, and links to everything mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to catch our second mini show, Ask Aya, every Friday, and our main show, Architect My Business, released every Monday. If you enjoyed our episodes and want to hear more, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time.